A revolutionary walks into a bar. You may have heard that the Revolutionary War was conceived in the back of a tavern, but it's only ever mentioned as an aside. No one explains why the headquarters of the Revolutionary War was in the basement of the Green Dragon Tavern, or ask why the Boston Tea Party conspired in the Green Dragon Tavern. Why were unofficial meetings for the Stamp Act Congress in October 1765 held in the Burn City Arms Tavern? Why did Virginia protesters, including George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Patrick Henry, assemble in the Apollo Room of the Raleigh Tavern in Williamsburg, Virginia, to debate and vote for joining the other colonies in an importation agreement? Why did people gather at Burn City Arms Tavern in New York to celebrate the signing of the non-importation agreement? Why did the New York chapter of Sons of Liberty meet at William Howard's Tavern and then create their own tavern named Hampton Hall? Why did Thomas Jefferson write the draft for the Declaration of Independence at the Indian Queen Tavern in Philadelphia? Why was the creation and first recruitment for the Marines at Tun Tavern in Philadelphia? Why was the Declaration of Independence ratified at the Indian King Tavern in New Jersey in 1776? What role did the tavern play in the beginning of the American Revolution? The most obvious role of the tavern is a place to gather and drink alcohol, and there was plenty of drinking in colonial America. But taverns were also important community spaces where a variety of activities took place. In some places, the tavern acted as a de facto courthouse, town hall, post office, church, hotel, library, news center, central market for traders and merchants, public auction houses, and as way stations for travelers. In small villages and rural communities, meeting in a tavern was the only alternative to gathering in homes, barns, or convenient field. The tavern was important and relevant in colonial American lives for reasons other than drinking. The tavern wasn't just a bar. The American Revolution was conceived in a tavern because it was already an established institution for the creation and maintenance of American social and cultural norms. I created this Wordle using my own essay to see whether or not my essay was about my thesis. So my top 6 words were tavern, taverns, alcohol, Washington, social, and time. So I think from the Wordle you can see that it does match my thesis, and my essay is about what I intended it to be about. While the consumption of alcohol was certainly important to colonial Americans, a focus on alcohol doesn't necessarily explain the importance of the tavern as a meeting place for the revolutionaries. The fermentation of alcohol could be found at nearly every colonial home. Homebrewing was an integral part of life at the time. Often there were several small ordinaries in which to buy alcohol if you ran low on the beverage for consumption at home. According to tavern historian Peter Thompson, colonial Philadelphians drank wherever they pleased. Philadelphians drank and socialized at home, at work, along the city's riverbanks, and in the streets and squares. The tavern was not the only source of alcohol, yet it was certainly the most popular. If colonists could procure alcohol elsewhere and taverns were so highly regulated, the question of what attracted revolutionaries to gather in a tavern still stands. The answer to this question lies in the role taverns played as a social institution. Tavern-going was first and foremost an act of sociability. According to Thompson, men could make statements regarding their social positions through the manner in which they drank and where they drank. The way in which elite members of society drank was to prove their gentility or social superiority. Gentlemen did not aimlessly drink. Serious drinking was accompanied by appointment of table officers and other necessary dispositions of such engagements. Perhaps that is why the Revolution was played in a tavern, because it gave the genteel an excuse to drink. Philadelphia's gentlemen took steps to ensure that they could perform proper drinking alone by gathering in private taverns or back rooms. They proposed laws that would ban toasting in taverns so that they could keep the ritual exclusively to themselves. They also formed special and private clubs like the Governor's Club at Tun Tavern that Alexander Hamilton describes in his book Gentleman's Progress. The purpose of these clubs was not only to drink, but the fostering and celebration of unity, correspondence, and decorum. Private clubs and meetings in taverns were not confined to Philadelphia. In Virginia, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Patrick Henry were known to frequent the Back Apollo Room and Raleigh Tavern in Williamsburg. Paul Revere wrote that the Boston Sons of Liberty held their meetings at the Green Dragon Tavern. Revere said that we were so careful that our meetings should be kept secret that every time we met, every person swore upon the Bible. The New York Sons of Liberty met at the William Howard's Tavern. As tensions in the colonies rose at the beginning of the Revolution, the New York Sons of Liberty felt it was necessary to establish their own tavern to use as their headquarters. They bought a place they named Hampton Hall and installed Colonel Henry Bicker as tavern keeper. In the papers and diaries of colonists like Benjamin Franklin and George Washington, we can see that they spent a considerable amount of time at their taverns. Benjamin Franklin was a clear advocate for legislation in Philadelphia to restrict the activities and ownership of any alcohol retailers, including taverns. Yet Franklin spent a lot of his time in taverns, including the Indian King, Indian Queen, City Arms, and Green Dragon Tavern. In 1727, Benjamin Franklin and a group of friends founded the Junto Club. The club met at the Indian King Tavern every Friday evening to discuss issues of morals, politics, and natural philosophy. The Junto Club eventually became the American Philosophical Society. George Washington kept an extensive diary that detailed where and how my time is spent. During the months that Washington was not at home, he spent almost all his time in taverns or inns. When in Williamsburg, Washington spent most of every night at Mrs. Campbell's Inn and frequented the Raleigh Tavern. It is hard to see that Washington was spending so much time at taverns because he tended to write the name of the proprietor instead of the name of the tavern in his diary. Many of his diary entries simply say supped at Campbell's or spent the evening at Hayes. In conclusion, there were social rules and legal regulations that governed taverns, tavern going, and drinking. The tavern wasn't just a bar for colonial Americans to get drunk in, although some did. The tavern was a social space for like-minded individuals to meet and discuss or argue about the problems in their lives. The American Revolution could have been planned in people's homes or other public buildings, and some events were, but the majority of it was planned in taverns because the tavern offered an invigorating, democratic, and egalitarian atmosphere for the seeds of liberty and freedom to be sown.